I can vote on the closed session minutes, but not the business minutes.
You.
This, the 25,000 has nothing to do with that.
Good evening. I call to order this meeting of the Washington County Board of Education. We have all members present this evening, and I declare a quorum. At this time, I'd like to introduce Eliza Bird, who is a fifth grade student at Boonesboro Elementary School. Eliza is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Hello, Eliza.
Hello.
Thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
When we met earlier, I noticed that you were reading, and I told you that we must share a passion
Yeah.
and an interest in reading.
Yeah.
What things do you enjoy besides reading?
I enjoy math, science, well, basically all subjects in school.
So you're a good student and you like school?
Yeah.
That's wonderful to hear. So you'll be moving on to the middle school next year?
Yeah.
What kind of thoughts do you have about that?
I'm kind of scared.
That's to be expected.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically all right now.
Okay. You'll do great. I'm sure you'll do great.
Thank
Do
you.
you have anything that you'd like to ask us or anything that you'd like to share with us this evening?
No, thank you.
No. Colleagues, do you have anything you'd like to ask of Eliza? Mr. Ridenour?
Yes. What are you reading right now?
I was reading Al Capone Shines My Shoes.
Oh, cool. Do you like mysteries or anything in particular you like?
Yeah, I like that book because it's about Alcatraz and well, it's like a realistic fiction book, and I also like fiction, fantasy, all sorts of books.
What's your favorite?
Mystery.
Any particular book that you've read that you really sticks out? Or any series of books?
I would have to say when I was younger, like in second grade, I read a series called Puppy Place, and it was really cool because it was cute too, because it gave a story. There was a book about like one or two different pets in each book that didn't have a family or somebody to take care of them, so then there's this certain family that would foster them. And it was just really sweet that they did that, and it kind of warmed my heart.
Good for you. Good for you. Thank you.
Do you have any pets?
I do. I have two. One is named Huday, and then one is named Fiona. I can't remember what breeds they are because they're mixed. I believe one of them is a Puggle and one is a Boogle. Is that right? Okay, yes.
Eliza, do you have someone with you this evening you'd like to introduce?
Yeah, I have my mom, Tina Bird. She teaches at Boonesboro Elementary, I think special ed. And yeah, and then there's Mr. Wagner that invited me to come do this afternoon, and I would just really like to thank him. So thank you.
And Mr. Wagner's your principal? Is that
Yeah.
right? Shout out to Mr. Wagner. Well, Eliza, you told me that you have somewhere else to be this evening. Where is that you told me you were going?
Basketball practice.
All right. And what position do you play?
We actually don't play positions
Ah.
in this league. We play man defense, so yeah. It's like most teams actually do play zone though, for some reason, but it's actually really fun.
Well, I'm impressed. You're a reader and an athlete.
Thanks.
You warm my heart.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thanks.
being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bird, for bringing your
Thank you.
Our first item of business is approval of tonight's agenda.
Move for approval.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bickford and Mrs. Fisher. Any discussion of the agenda? All those in favor of tonight's agenda? Okay, we're unanimous. Motion carries. Next item of business is approval of minutes.
Madam President, I move for the approval of the closed session minutes dated Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019.
But is there a second? Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Are there any additions or corrections? No? All those in favor of accepting that set of minutes? All right, we're unanimous. Motion carries.
I abstain.
Oh, I'm sorry. So that's 6 affirmative and 1 abstention. Thank you, Mrs. Fisher.
I also move for the approval of the business meeting minutes dated Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Gaspard.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Any additions or corrections to that set of minutes? All those in favor? Okay, 6 affirmatives, student member concurs, and 1 abstention.
Yeah, abstain too.
Oh, you did?
I wasn't here.
Well, you're going to have to move your arm a little bit.
Well, I thought you knew that.
Okay, so that's 5 affirmative, student member concurs, 2 abstentions. Thank you. Our next item on our agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Michael.
Thank you, President Williams. Tonight, we have 3 recognitions we want to do. And for our guests, it's a little bit confusing, but we do the recognition at the table, all 3 right in a row, and then we'll invite people to come up when we ask the board members to get down front and recognize you. So this time, I'd like to ask Beth Moore to come to the table. She's going to share a little bit with us about our National Merit Scholarship Commended Scholars. I'd also like to invite Dave Herman to the table. He's our Social Studies Content Specialist. He's going to share some exciting news, I think that most people are already aware, regarding our We the People competition and the success, once again, of Boonesboro High School. And also Robin Handler, I'd like to invite her to the table. This is National School Counselor Week, and Robin's just going to give us a little information about our counselors. We do have an elementary, middle, and high school counselor to recognize, but when we recognize our counselors, after we recognize the 3 with proclamation, we'll invite all our counselors in the audience to come up, because I think I see more than 3 counselors here this evening. So we appreciate them coming. So with that, Ms. Moore, we'll start with you with just some brief comments, and then we'll hold introducing the students until we get through all 3 presentations and the board comes down front.
Madam President, Dr. Michael, members of the board, and our families and friends, I have the honor of presenting certificates to several outstanding students who were named National Merit Scholarship Commended Scholars. These students received this honor by earning a specific index score during grade 11 when they took the preliminary Scholastic Aptitude Test, National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. We all know it as the PSAT NMSQT.
Okay. All right, we'll introduce our guests in a few minutes. Mr. Herman.
Thank you to Dr. Michael and the board for the invitation this evening. The Center for Civic Education organizes a yearly We the People competition in order to promote civic competency and responsibility. Washington County students have a long history of excelling at the state, local, and national level in this competition. We would like to send a special congratulations to Boonesboro High School for winning their 4th consecutive state We the People championship. They took this honor last month down in Annapolis at the state competition. They will be heading to the national competition in Leesburg, Virginia at the end of April. And we would like to congratulate all the students and their advisors for this wonderful honor.
Ms. Handler.
Thank you for recognizing school counselors. This is National School Counselor Week, and the theme this year is providing lessons for life. Our school counselors in Washington County believe in all students and are advocates for students, work with parents, and work very hard to cultivate opportunities for students to grow in academic, personal, social, and career pathways to prepare as lifelong learners and in success no matter what their endeavors are. And this is just a quick public service announcement that for our seniors who are planning, whether it's technical school, college, two-year school, next Wednesday night at South High, we invite you to learn about financial aid, scholarships, the new Promise program at HCC. So I had to sneak that in. It's at 6 o'clock at HCC, so please plan, 6:30, please plan to attend. Thank you all.
Okay, and with that, I'd like to invite the board members to go down front. I'm going to ask our three presenters if you'd use the mic over here, and that way we'll have a clear view of our recipients. So Beth, we'll start with you, please.
So our National Merit Scholarship Commended Scholars from, line up folks, jump up. We were going to be last, so we had this plan. From Boonesboro High School, Andrew Osmond, Maeve Dever, and Zaheen Murshad. Where'd they get to? Oh.
I'm sorry, Ms. Moore, I think I might have mixed that up.
That's
I didn't
okay.
realize you had them out
We
there.
just follow directions. So our Boonesboro High School commended scholars. Maeve gets to come through twice. Oh, we left them in the hall, sorry. We're gonna get this right. Sorry guys, we changed the order of things. So for the third time, see, we said we were gonna do the best, right? The best. Boonesboro High School, come on up, guys. Andrew Osmond, Maeve Dever, and Zaheen Murshad. From North Hagerstown High School, Ryan Barnett. From Smithsburg High School, Ryan Goodmanson and Sydney Scott. From South Hagerstown High School, Holly McAndrew. And from Washington County Technical High School, Tyler Adkins and Alexander Wizdala.
Okay, we would like to introduce, I'd like to introduce the 2019 Maryland State We the People champions from Boonesboro High School. Maeve Dever, Karen Hosova, Tracy Kinzer, Thomas Lane, Alex Lettingham, Casey Mazzoni, Sarah Roll, Viviana Torres, and Pip Videtti, and their advisor, Mrs. Ashley Vassick.
Right here on 3, 1, 2, 3. One more, 1, 2, 3. Great, thank you guys.
Our school counselors appreciate your support. We are now at 60 school counselors. It means everything to us to be recognized this evening, and this group means everything to me. So representing our counselors this evening, Helen Huffer, Hickory Elementary School, Kristen Gano, Boonesboro Middle School, Carol Crackerman Barnhart, Washington County Technical High School. And now I want all the school counselors who are here this evening to join us for our picture.
While we're getting our picture ready, we do want to note that maybe, I guess, for the last time for Counselor Week, this will be Robin Handler's last meeting for School Counselor Week. Obviously, she'll be with us for the rest of the year, but Robin's going to retire this year. Very excited for her, and we're also very appreciative of all the work that she's done as well. One of the things I also note in the budget, there's been a long time advocacy for counselors and additional social workers in our school system. If our budget survives as presented, and we'll see what happens here in the near future, we do have 10 additional social workers / counselor, a combination of those two going into our budget. So if we have 60, if we could go to 70, that would be a huge move forward in that. So, but thank you all for your work and for representing the school system.
Well, that cleared it out.
Madam President, that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Michael. At this time, we'll have public comment. I have no one signed up in advance. Is there anyone who would like to speak this evening? No? Okay, we'll move on to new business because we have no old business to conduct. And our first item under new business involves Dr. Akers. Good evening, Dr. Akers.
Good evening, President Williams, members of the board, Dr. Michael. I'm here on behalf of Smithsburg High School to request your approval of a very generous donation of $25,000 from an anonymous donor to support the robotics club at Smithsburg High School.
Thank you, Dr. Akers. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to approve a gift in the amount of $25,000 from an anonymous donor to Smithsburg High School.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Any discussion, any questions for Dr. Akers? No? All those in favor of approving the gift in the amount of $25,000 from an anonymous donor to Smithsburg High School? All right, it's unanimous, and the student member concurs. Thank you
Thank you.
very much. And thank you to that anonymous donor for that very generous gift. Our next item under consideration is the review of our board's operating norms and communication processes. Both our adopted board norms and communication processes call for us to review them, and should we wish to revise each of them, this should happen following an election and the reorganization of the board. At a retreat on December 8th, 2018, we reviewed both documents, and at this time is our opportunity to take action on those two documents.
Madam President, I move to revise the Washington County Board of Education operating norms by changing norm number 13 to read, expand our knowledge of public, individual, and collective education to enhance discussion and decision-making as a member of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Any discussion? All those in favor of Mr. Bickford's motion? All right, we're unanimous. Student member concurs.
Madam President, I move to revise the Washington County Board of Education operating norms by adding a number 14 that will read, contact the school principals to arrange for visitations.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Any discussion? All those in favor of Mr. Bickford's motion? We're unanimous. Student member concurs.
Madam President, I move to revise the Washington County Board of Education communication processes by striking the word ombudsman in number 1 under A, communication with concerned individuals.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Guessford. Any discussion? All those in favor of Mr. Bickford's motion? We're unanimous. Student member concurs.
Madam President, I move to revise the Washington County Board of Education communication processes by changing number 9 under B, communications and board meetings, by adding the words closed sessions and business to precede the word meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. All those in favor of Mr. Bickford's motion? We're unanimous. Student member concurs.
Madam President, I move to revise the Washington County Board of Education communication processes by changing number 8 under C, requesting information and lines of communication, by adding the words and writers following the word speakers.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Any discussion? All those in favor of Mr. Bickford's motion? Okay, we're unanimous. Student member concurs.
And Madam President, the final motion, I move to revise the Washington County Board of Education communication processes by changing number 9 under C, requesting information and lines of communications, by replacing the commas surrounding the words "or vice president in the absence of the president" with parentheses.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Guessford. Any discussion? All those in favor of Mr. Bickford's motion? We're unanimous. Student member concurs. Thank you very much. Our next item of new business involves Mr. Prue, our Chief Operating Officer. Mr. Prue.
Good evening, Mrs. Williams, members of the board, Dr. Michael. This evening, staff is seeking your approval to dedicate the revenues generated from the Milestone Cellular Tower on the campus of North Hagerstown High School. As a matter of history, on March 20, 2018, the Board of Education approved a contract with Milestone Communications to construct the cellular tower on the North High campus. Revenues at this time are expected to be approximately $400,000 over 10 years. It's worth noting that those revenues will fluctuate depending on the number of co-locations of cellular carriers on that tower. At this time, $400,000 I think is on the bottom end of what we could expect depending on the number of carriers, but I believe at this point there are 2 signed on and a third in the works. To give you a sense of where that is, construction should begin on the tower soon, with expected completion by the end of March 2019. Staff is seeking your approval to dedicate the funds for capital improvements to the campus at North Hagerstown High School.
Thank you, Mr. Prue. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to dedicate the revenue received from the construction and operation of the cellular tower on the campus of North Hagerstown High School towards capital improvements at North Hagerstown High School as may be necessary over time.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Gaspard. Any discussion? Any questions for Mr. Prue? No? Okay, the motion is to dedicate the revenue received from the construction and operation of the cellular tower on the campus of North Hagerstown High School towards capital improvements at North Hagerstown High School as may be necessary over time. All those in favor? Unanimous, and the student member concurs. Thank you. And at this time, we'll move on to item number 4.
So I
which
think,
is-
I was going
Go
to say, I
ahead.
think Mr. Brandenburg and Mr. Sisler are going to be joining Mr. Prue, going to be sharing the draft budget to the school board. The budget is identical to the budget pretty much that we presented you in the work session back before the winter break. We do now have some more solid state numbers. Obviously, those things are still subject to change. We also know the amount of the low effort number has been solidified at this point. I do want to note, and staff will probably point out some of these things as well, but in this budget, we are addressing 18 positions for special education, some of which we started mid-year, some just started in the last couple of weeks. We're addressing those for a full year cycle to address some of our special needs children. The budget also includes 20, and this is the biggest change in the budget, from 15 to 20 pre-K teachers. This will allow us to have universal pre-K. We estimate that to be about 80% of the population of 4-year-olds could attend full-day pre-K here in Washington County if this part of the budget is successfully approved. It also increases 21 paraprofessionals for pre-K. We have 2 parapros that will be in one of the special needs 4-year-old programs, and that's why the numbers are different from 20 and 21. It would support, as indicated earlier, 10 positions for counselors/social workers. We need a combination of both of those. That would be a significant increase to our general population as well as our special needs population for support. Includes 3 English language learner teachers. We increased that last year. We continue to have an increasing diverse population of young folks that can't speak English as their first language. And we've had a lot of success with our students, particularly those that are young. Even in our 4-year-old pre-K program, has helped to address our EL students, our English learners. So I'm pleased that we were able to have that in the budget. Budget also supports 2 more resource officers, which we're trying to continue to expand to support safety and promote safety in our building. Through the hard work of our really our employee groups and cooperation with the board, we've been able to manage our healthcare increase at 3%, which we really think is a really solid accomplishment, but we did that in cooperation with ESP, our support personnel, our teachers, administrators, and the board, looking at ways that we could manage some costs. So as a result of our increase last year and some cost management, we're hoping to realize and be able to maintain our $3 million fund balance for the future, which is a 3% increase for next year. So those are some of the highlights that I wanted to note in the budget. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Prue and his team, and we'd be glad to answer questions as they get into the budget process.
Thank you, Dr. Michael. And for the board members, there's a brief PowerPoint. We want to highlight what some of the changes that Dr. Michael presented mean for you as you look towards the budget. Maybe. So initially, when we look at pre-K expansion, get all these pies out here for you on the chart. You know, just historical perspective, and you saw some of this data just at the last meeting as we talked about kindergarten readiness assessment. You saw some of the historical data from 2016-17 school year where we had 735 pre-K students, the majority of which were half-day students. We are now moved to the point where, with the budget proposal you have in front of you, we will have 1,345 pre-K students, with all but only 35 of those being in full-day setting. So 1,310 students being in a full-day setting, which is just a tremendous asset for our community and a way to really set our students apart. From a dollars and cents perspective, the budget rolls out this way. You have a budget presented to you tonight that is for your adoption as the board's draft of $286,576,064. It is expected that we'll see state revenue of $153,246. That's an increase of $5.9 million over the previous year, and really far surpassed staff's expectations of what the state budget allocation would be for this year. We expected more along the lines of $3 million and received nearly $6 million. Local MOE, or maintenance of effort revenue, would be $100,491,390. That is a combination of the maintenance of effort calculation, which does include a reduction of nearly $500,000 for our reduction in students for the current year. Also is reflective of the low effort designation applied by the state based on many factors that requires the county to provide an additional 2.5% in funding for the coming year. That calculation was nearly $2.5 million. That gets us to really a $1.9 million increase in local funding for FY20. We have other revenues just over $1 million, and so we're going to be seeking an additional $1.8 million, or really $1,878,963 from the local funding agency, the Board of County Commissioners, to balance this budget. And with that, staff is here to accept any questions you may have.
Colleagues, questions?
Just real
Mr.
quick,
Rodner.
you guys would know, but how many years now, when did we start seeing the low effort designation applied to counties? How many years has that been?
FY18 was the first year, so this will, FY20 will be the third.
And have we been low effort designation all of those years?
That's correct. This is the highest value at 2.5%. It's the highest value allowed by law.
And there's like three ways that is calculated, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Three or four.
It's the lesser of 3 measurements, and that lesser is 2.5% this year. So it's a little bit less than the county's growth in wealth per pupil.
Anyone else?
I just have a statement. You know, as a board member, we get this budget, and the superintendent gives this to us to review. I'd like to thank our staff. This past week, I've sent probably about 15 questions in, as has my colleagues. I'd like to thank Dr. Michael for getting those answers to us. We sit up here, and it sounds like we don't have the questions to ask, but we do ask in advance, and the staff get on this right away, and we usually get it within 12 hours. And I know it's a lot when you have this many board members asking, but I do want to thank you for your efforts to get us these answers so that we're not asking a bunch of questions in a meeting like this. So just so everyone knows, the board has been very involved in this, and I just want to thank everyone for helping us get these answers before, and I'm looking forward to supporting it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Besford, for your comments. Anyone else? Dr. Michael?
I did want to note, Mr. Prue indicated we went down 109 students. That's what we call the money students, or the money number. That's K-12 students. We decreased 109 students as of September 30th, but we increased more than 100 pre-K students in full-day pre-K. This budget, while down 109, reflecting money for 109 students down, will also increase our pre-K by 400 additional students. So actually, the support for this budget will be supporting a substantial number of students additionally over what we have this year. Just wanted to make that note.
Thank you, Dr. Michael. I too would like to thank Dr. Michael and staff for all the work put into bringing this draft budget to us, for answering all our many questions. At this time, I'm looking for a motion.
I move to adopt the superintendent's fiscal year 2020 recommended general fund budget as the Board of Education's FY 2020 draft general fund budget.
Thank you, Mr. Besford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to adopt the superintendent's recommended general fund budget as the Board of Education's budget? Unanimous, and the student member concurs. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Dr. Michael. So we'll continue the superintendent's report.
Just a couple announcements. This past Saturday, had the opportunity to attend the robotics competition at South Hagerstown High School. We had 35 teams there from the surrounding counties, the majority of which were from Washington County. Very interesting competition. They changed the challenge from one year to the next, and I can say our students did an outstanding job. I do want to offer special thanks to Volvo Mack Truck. They really sponsored the event. They had 15-plus staff members there to help support, judge. It runs very, very efficiently as you watch the competitions, and I did want to take a minute to thank them. We have all-county band this weekend. We've had a number of weekends with all-county activities. The all-county band is this weekend at North Hagerstown High School at 7 o'clock. A week from today at 4 o'clock, Teacher Tuesday. So all teachers are invited to come out to Teacher Tuesday. It's an opportunity for us to talk about subject matter. Our topic for next Tuesday is student discipline. And last would be the mention that Robin had about next Wednesday. I want to say that event's 6:30. I can't remember if it's 6 or 6:30, where you can hear more about FAFSA. They also have a guest speaker coming to share a little bit about how you can secure dollars for post-secondary education. And with that, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Michael. Next, we have consideration of a vote on decision and order 2019-001. Mr. Trotta?
Good evening. I'm requesting the Board of Education's consideration and vote on decision and order number 2019-001. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trotta. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to adopt decision and order 2019-001.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Any questions for Mr. Trotta? Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Okay, 6 opposed, 1 opposed. Okay, Mr. Trotta, we have another vote on
Yes.
decision and order?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm requesting the Board of Education's consideration and vote on decision and order number 2019-002. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trotta. Is there a motion?
I move for the adoption of decision order 2019-002.
Thank you, Mr. Desford. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Any questions for Mr. Trotta? Any discussion? All those in favor of the adoption of decision and order 2019-002? 6 yeas and opposed?
Abstention.
1 abstention. Thank you. Mr. Trotta?
Thank you. I'm requesting the Board of Education's consideration and vote on decision and order number 2019-003. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trotta. Is there a motion?
I move to adopt decision order 2019-003.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Any questions for Mr. Trotta? Any discussion? All those in favor of adoption of decision and order 2019-003?
5 yeas, Madam President. Since I was ill during that hearing, I will not express any decision.
Any opposition? 1 no. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have personnel action. Dr. Bishop.
Good evening, Mrs. Williams, Dr. Michael, and board members. We discussed earlier in closed session several staff changes. At this time, I ask for your approval of today's personnel actions.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Staff changes.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Any questions for Dr. Bishop? The motion is to approve personnel actions as discussed in closed session. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't see Mr. Bickford's arm. Thank you. Okay, we're unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have reports to the board. We have a legislative briefing in our current legislative session. Good evening, Mrs. Cade. Mr. Trotta.
It's very nice to be here, and I say to each of you how pleasant it is and how nice it is to watch and listen to your sessions, because I talk to some of my colleagues whose Board of Education meetings are totally contentious and are going till 1 o'clock in the morning. And so I appreciate how you manage your business and work well together.
This is Mr. Rogers' neighborhood up here. Mr. Rogers' neighborhood up here.
As you're probably aware, because you see the paper, there is a lot going on in Annapolis. It is a very busy time. Today or this week is when the last bills can go in from the House and the Senate that can be introduced without having to go to the Rules Committee. So I understand that today there were literally dozens, somebody said hundreds, but literally dozens of bills introduced today. So there's probably a lot of new surprises that are ahead for us that we haven't seen quite yet. But some of those are good surprises. I've included in my report, instead of telling you a lot about the budget, I used the governor's points on the budget. And the budget is a little happier this year because the tax revenues are substantially up. So there's nobody crying as much foul, but we haven't seen what the legislature is going to do to the budget. They probably aren't going to make serious, drastic changes, and certainly not to education. But they will take exception from some of the things that the governor has proposed. In the governor's budget, the things that are really probably the most relevant, there is money from the lockbox. As you remember that we talked about that last year and we voted for it. And so there's $125 million from the lockbox to add to the current education budget. And the governor has proposed how to distribute that, of which 15 million would be for pre-K. And my understanding that will allow the state to provide the full-time equivalent payments for pre-K that they have not paid in the past. I'm not certain of that, but that's my best understanding of that. And
Ms. Kay, if I could,
yes.
You can add this back to your time since I'm taking some time from Martin. I don't know for sure, and I've asked the question of MSDE whether what we reached the milestone with this budget, if we can support it, that Washington County would be considered a county with universal pre-K, whether we'd be eligible for 3 or 4 counties right now get some money for their pre-K programs beyond state grants or federal grants. So this potentially would make us eligible. The response from MSDE was they weren't certain what was going to happen with Kerwin, so I didn't get 100% certainty that we would get funding in the future. But it might be after we have it for 1 year, we might get funding for that because we have universal pre-K. We're one of the few counties that has that. And some of those, all those that have universal pre-K right now do receive a portion of per student allotment for their pre-K, but only if you have universal pre-K. So I'm hopeful that that could happen, either with or without this money, so.
That would be an excellent step. So there's also the money that they are proposing for including 3 more P-TECH schools, and I don't know that you have yet established a P-TECH. And so they're expanding and trying to establish at least 3 more P-TECH schools this year, and there's $300,000, not a lot of money in, but some to provide the incentive for that. And the 3 things that are in the budget, though, that the governor has proposed in the education budget that are of concern to us and continue to be of concern. One is the BOOST program. It was BOST and now it's BOOST, which is the money that goes to scholarships for children in non-public schools. They're supposed to be coming from schools that are not high-quality schools, and then so that they would be getting a better education in their non-public school. The statistics haven't really supported that. A lot of the students who got the scholarships the first year were already in their parochial school. And so, but this is a trend we see. And so it started at, I don't remember, 5 million, and then 7, and now 10 million. Money that we would prefer to see go into the public school system. And then the governor, as you recall, established by an executive order this Office of Compliance and Oversight, which we kind of wonder about. It's to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And it has a staff of 14 people, I believe, or 11 people, and $1.4 million budget. And I'm sure that I think it's most likely that the legislature will have some action on that item and may cut it back or cut it out. And thirdly, the governor has proposed that the charter school get construction money at the rate of $1,600 per student per year. So if you have that would be $160,000 for a school that had 100 children. And, you know, as you're fighting for every construction dollar you can get, is this the way that public funds should be spent? Again, the charter schools we know are public schools, but part of the deal really has been that they provide their own space. And I know that's not been an issue here in this county, but in some of the counties, it's a very big issue. The school construction, this Building Opportunities Act, is a very big bill. And it has all kinds of implications. The good part about it, it would provide a great deal of construction money sort of immediately, because it would use part of the money from the lockbox to issue revenue bonds. And revenue bonds are not full faith and credit of the state. And so revenue bonds could be issued, and it would provide much more than the 300 and some million or 400 million that you currently have available for school construction. However, it means that as those are being paid back, you are starting to have the debt from the past that you are still paying off in the future. But in terms of making something happen big now, it would be good. All right, the second piece of this is that it would be the Stadium Authority, which has the power to issue revenue bonds, that would be issuing these bonds. But not only would they be issuing the bonds, but they would have the authority for the design and the oversight of the construction that's being done. And their philosophy may not be the same as your philosophy about what a school should be and what quality of school, what quality of building there should be, and what the life of the school should be. And so that's a very tenuous part of this proposal. The IAC would be involved in it. Some counties could get exempted out of having the Stadium Authority do the oversight, but not all. The third thing is that it doesn't really make clear who pays back the money, whether it's paid back from the next 125 million that's in the coming from the lockbox, or whether it is loans to local systems, local counties, that would have to be paid back. This has good implications and bad, because if your county needs to have the forward money and could borrow it, that could be very important, particularly if you're a fast-growing school system. On the other hand, if it has to be paid back, again, it's using other funds that you might want in the future to be using for other purposes. So you did a creative financing for the School for the Arts, and it worked out very well. This bill is pretty complicated, has lots of pros and lots of cons, and at the legislative meeting yesterday, the May Legislative Committee just took a vote in opposition to the bill, partly because it would take away a large percentage of the lockbox money, which has been seen and which was maybe sold primarily as being to provide money for the Kirwan initiatives. Kirwan allows the Kirwan thing allowed for looking at construction, but it was not the major, the lockbox looked at construction, but that was not the real intention of the lockbox money. It was like the last possible use for the lockbox money. So there's going to be a lot of discussion on this bill. And there's some variations on this bill that are being put in. Some of the bigger counties that are growing really fast may find the need for something like this. This is similar to what's being done in Baltimore City, where the Stadium Authority is building the schools. There's not a lot of happiness all the time between the Stadium Authority and the school system up there. So it's one we need to watch. And if you have any strong views on it and want to provide any testimony about it, that's something that you could look to doing. Back to this page, okay. The Kerwin Commission, you all have copies of the final report, it's heavy reading. And because they have not yet figured out the methodology for funding it, the policy reports have been adopted by the Kerwin Commission, but they are a continuing body until next fall we'll be working out what they propose to be the funding mechanisms. And but that doesn't mean that we aren't going to have things popping up this session. There is the kind of expectation that late in the session, like they did the safety bill last year, all of a sudden, at the very end of the session, in the last week or so, that there might come in a Kerwin-type bill that last few days of the session that gets all thrown together and gets pushed through. What it would be, we don't know. If you talk to one legislator, they have one interest and another legislator has another. For instance, Senator Pinsky, who now chairs the Education Committee, is very eager to provide $10,000 increases in all teacher salaries over the next 3 years. That will take a lot of the money that would come from the lockbox or from any other source. Some of the others may be pushing the pre-K idea or the career idea. Rosa Pepp has put in a lot of bills about career readiness and so forth. So it's like you have to have your antenna up all the time. And it's really why the MABE meetings are so valuable and PASAM for the superintendents, because somebody hears something and we all get the information, and so there is a lot of working together of the education people. And on this year, we don't seem to be on different paths from each other. Next year, when they start talking about the financing and who gets, and the formulas, that's when all the counties won't be holding hands. Say mine. There's, as usual, there's something in about special ed, and there's a bill in that would require that when a parent prevails in a court situation on the special ed, that the school system would have to pay for the attorney's fees and the expert witnesses. I think that hearing is coming up this week. There's a bill in, and like it was in last year, to expand the membership of the State Board of Education by adding 2 teachers and 1 parent. MABE has consistently opposed that because it's adding, once you start adding specific specific people or specific categories of people, then everybody else wants to have their category on the state board too. So that bill may or may not move. There's a bill in to do away with all polystyrene, food service products over the next few years. It's fairly expensive and it's a fairly tight timeline. So whether that will move or whether it will move with a longer timeline for compliance, I'm not certain. The perennial bill about having elementary children having 150 minutes every week of physical education, with 90 minutes of that being in formal physical ed. That the price tag on that is really high, because you start, if you're going to add 150 minutes, is there anything you can give up in order to absorb those 150 minutes? Or would you be having to expand the school day and the costs and so there's a very high price tag on that. But the person who's put it in is now the vice chairman of Ways and Means Committee, which is where all the education bills go in the House side. So he has a lot more influence now than he had before, and so we have to be very careful as we look at that bill. I'm going to skip the trauma-informed approach. It was a new phrase to me, but apparently is not a new phrase to most people, as they're looking at how schools can be trained to deal with trauma of various sorts. Our favorite bill, Senate Bill 13, Mr. Stauffer, I know that I am expected to get this bill passed this year. It's gotten very interesting. The public defender came in and is trying to propose changes in the basic reportable offenses bill, the part that now has been working so well, where the school system is notified on Monday morning of a reportable offense of any student, and that system has been working. But the public defender doesn't think, because some of those kids may be innocent, that they should be that should be reported until somehow it's gone through the court and they've established that there really is a charge, and so forth and so forth. So we don't want that to happen. We don't want to change the basic bill. Okay. I've spent a lot of time with learning a lot about the Department of Juvenile Services, and their legislative person is very straightforward, and I have a lot of respect for him. And they won't take a position against our bill. They won't take a position for the bill, but they, I think, are comfortable. They only needed to get one phrase out, and that was the services that the child is having, because that would be part of the court order, and the court order would get into, if it had to pass that along, then it becomes a FERPA violation and so forth. So we can take that out. I've been checking back here and working with MABE and so forth. I don't think taking that phrase out is a problem. And so we think that the public defender is okay about our part of the bill, and that juvenile services is not going to get in the way of our part of the bill. But some of the legislators on the Judicial Proceedings Committee, including the vice chairman, is kind of looking at that part that the public defender is proposing. So they had it on their voting list the other day, but there were too many questions, so they didn't vote. And I learned the hard way that in that committee, you don't go in while they are voting. In some of the committees, they're happy to have you there. But in that committee, you're not supposed to be there. It's legally public, but the protocol is really that you're not in there when they're discussing the bill. So that's kind of hard. You have to wait and talk to your friends when they come out. And so I'm spending a lot of time visiting people, meeting tomorrow again with the staff of the chairman, met yesterday with the staff of the vice chairman, and with another one of the committee members. And so I'll be spending the next couple days spending a lot of time trying to get that bill voted out of committee to the floor. And I will visit I'm in Senator Serafini's office a great deal, and so we're all working together on this. So, Mr. Stauffer, I understand that bill is supposed to get passed, and I want very much to get it passed. And finally, the school calendar bill is one that your superintendent testified very effectively the other day. And it was even mentioned in the paper, I can't remember which paper, but that there was an impressive group of superintendents who really talked very well about why you should have the right and the authority to develop the calendar for the school system. There are two bills in. One just allows, it clarifies the bill from last year that says you can have 5 extra days at the end of June 15th if you need them or want them. And that bill last year, the governor even signed, but then the interpretation of it by the attorneys was that it only applied for snow days. And so I think that piece will probably go through without any problem. The broader bill, which says you would have the total authority, there would be no starting date, no ending date, you got to get your 180 days in and your so many hours, and if you want to have, Jewish holidays and you want to have, and you want to have a long spring break, that's your business. The committee, I think, the chairman of the committee really likes the bill, was his bill. So I think it will get out of that committee, but whether it will get through the floor and get across the hall to the other side. Because there are a lot of parents who have made a lot of noise about that bill. And of course, the people in Ocean City in that area feel like it helps business to have the schools start after Labor Day. But I thought, Dr. Michael, your testimony was very clear and very helpful about how kids learn, are ready to learn in August, and in June they are wanting to get out, and their absentee rate is very high and so forth. So there's a great deal of logic to the bill, we think, but the opponents, I'm sure, are going to be very noisy about it. So those are the, did I say that, was there one other bill I was going to, reportable fence school construction, the stadium bill, the stadium authority. So I've probably told you more than you wanted to know. But as you know, I like to talk about it, and I am happy to answer any questions, or if you want to ask me anytime through the week about what's going on, I'm always happy to talk to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cade. Mr. Kessler.
Ms. Cade, with you being down there in Annapolis, are you hearing any kind of talk on the Kerwin, with the money, the funding? Have you heard any talk out there that's just people are throwing some things out that may be a possibility for the funding of that?
Well, certainly the lockbox money is helping, because it's $125 million this year. It's 275, 125, 250, 375, and 500. So that money helps, but it won't get you all the way. And and beyond that, there hasn't been, you haven't started to hear about other sources of funding that could pick up that $4 billion or whatever it would take to implement the whole thing. That's where the rubber hits the road, and that's where it's going to be really tough. And part of the Kerwin is pretty idealistic too. To change things that are going to take time, to change the whole education for teachers and really elevate teachers to a professional status with other people who have the same level of education. That's going to take more years than 5,
Right.
more years than 10 probably. But it's something that is very appropriate, I think. No, I don't know how I haven't heard much rumbling about where they think money can come from.
Okay.
Sorry, I haven't.
No, that's all right.
I'm
No.
going to listen.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Mrs. Cade, again, thank you for the work that you're doing for us in Annapolis.
My pleasure.
We appreciate
And I
it.
hope to see many of you down there on the 21st.
You will.
When we have the MABE Day, and I'm lining up some appointments for you for that day. and look forward to being with you that day.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Trotter. Okay, continuing under reports to the board, we'll move to board member committee reports. Start with curriculum and instruction.
Instruction did not meet this month, or in January, but will meet on Tuesday, February 26th at 4:00 PM in the board conference room.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. Facilities committee?
Thank you. Yes, we will be meeting for the first time this year, February the 12th, Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock on the third floor conference room.
Thank you, Mr. Kessler.
You're
Finance committee?
Finance Committee met just prior to our closed session today and went over our quarterly budget adjustments, among other things, and we set our next meeting date for Tuesday, April 30th at 8 a.m.
Mr. Bickford? Human resources?
Yes, Human Resources Committee met last Tuesday, the 29th. We went through the Apple tracking system, got a little heads up on that, a little bit about our teacher recruitment efforts, and also the digital marketing that we're doing to try to attract more applicants. We won't be meeting until probably March.
Thank you, Mr. Ladner. Policy review and development committee? Mrs.
Policy
Fisher?
committee has not met since our last meeting. Tentatively, we will meet on the 26th of this month at our normal time of 9:15.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Anyone else have anything? We'll move on then to miscellaneous business. And we have future agenda items. You should have a list of future agenda items included in your packet. This evening, we had the first of our legislative briefings. We have another on March 5th, another on April 2nd, and a final one on May 7th. Coming up at our second meeting in February, we have the FIAC committee reporting on its recommendations of the attendance zones for Sharpsburg Elementary School. If you have any suggestions for agenda items, please let a member of the Agenda Planning Committee know. And we'll move on then to board member comments. Mr. Mackley, would you like to begin down there?
Comments today?
Thank you. Mrs. Murray?
I have two things. I'd like to congratulate the Washington County Public Schools Education Foundation for being nominated for the Nonprofit of the Year by the Washington County Chamber of Commerce, and the winners will be announced at an awards ceremony on February 27th at Hager Hall. And I'd like to again congratulate the We the People team from Boonesboro High School on winning the state competition and wish them much luck in the national competition this spring in Leesburg, Virginia. And they're having a fundraiser at Panera Bread Monday night from 6 to 9 for, to help with their trip. So if anybody likes Panera Bread, just mention their name and they'll get part of the proceeds.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Mr. Bickford?
Nothing for me.
Mr. Stauffer? Mr. Kessler?
I'd like to extend a thank you to our custodial staff for being out in the weather during this cold snap. I know that was a challenge, being out, getting our sidewalks and our driveways, our maintenance department, getting our lots cleaned off, so congratulations for hard work that they did and a good job. And for all the secretaries who probably had to answer phones with all the questions. So thank you to those staff members for being diligent on their job and during this tough winter months.
Mrs. Fisher?
Just, it's good to be back.
Welcome. It's good to have you back. Mr. Rydner?
Just real quickly, just a public service announcement of such sorts. for all the people who were concerned about the snow and decisions that were made, I think take the opportunity, if you can, to speak with somebody in our facilities department or Dr. Michael and understand that this is a lot of times it's a crapshoot. I know when I went to bed, it was not supposed to start snowing until 9 o'clock, and it was supposed to be finished by 3, 1 inch. Well, that went out the window when I woke up at 6. And by that time, our people have to make a decision as to what we're going to do in that morning. And the decision was made to come in. I cannot, say that was a bad decision, because, everything seemed to indicate that it wasn't a big deal. But things happen. I'd like to thank our bus drivers in particular, our custodial staff, for the efforts that they had during the storm. It wasn't a big storm, folks. It was like 2 or 3 inches in most places. But unfortunately, it was also 14, 15 degrees. And that never changed. And that was another thing that they said would change during the course of the day. So the drivers, we got all of our buses back safely. We got all of our kids home safely. We got our walkways cleared, our driveways cleared. It was a good effort by all of our people, and I've thanked them. And, for those of you that are fired up about this and upset with us, my apologies. But every now and then, something like this is going to happen. So we'll continue to do the best we can, and we are always concerned about the safety of our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ravenel. I have no comments, and we'll stand adjourned. I hope you didn't have any either.